Welcome you all to my talk called Switching Sides, the Android Experience Seen from an iOS Developer's Perspective. Now, before I start this talk, quick raise of hands, who of you is an Android developer? All right, so I may or may not have the whole room against me by the end of this talk. We will see. All right. Yep. About me, I'm Hitzker, and I work for a company called Tractive, and we make pet GPS and wellness trackers like these ones. And we are based in Austria. And I'm an iOS developer here, or maybe not. You will see later if I switch to Android. And my day-to-day work, I mainly work with SwiftUI. So let's come to the scenario, like how did I end up in this situation? The Android team was understaffed a couple months ago, and we wanted to do a proof of concept to see if one guy from the other team can do an Android feature and vice versa. And it was a simple and decoupled feature, so you didn't have to know the whole Android code base to work on this one. And we also wanted to do a plugin component that can be used everywhere. So we have this new what's new dialog. So we did a new feature and wanted to implement a cool new what's new dialog. But the host of this view, so the background and then this pop-up container should be able to be used everywhere. So let's come to the chosen one. It was me, surprise. However, I didn't have much Android experience. The last Android project I did was 6 years ago. I didn't have a clue what is composed. Like, should I compose a song? Or Mozart was a famous Austrian musician, but I am not, so I have no idea. And I barely worked with Kotlin before. So you might wonder, why this guy? And I did this feature in SwiftUI, and I also had Flutter experience. So I knew about SwiftUI and Flutter, and then I could combine the holy trinity of Compose, SwiftUI, and Flutter. And I also didn't have any other big feature I worked on, so I was available to work on this feature. So the journey begins, and how should you start? So I asked the Android lead how I should get started. And then he wrote me these steps. First, install Android Studio. Then work with Kotlin cones to get familiar with Kotlin. Then learn Compose with some Android course, which is the one on the Android website. And then you can work on the feature. So I started with Android Studio. And I was excited because my last time Android Studio was 6 years ago. And I was excited for the new look of it and generally the new look and feel. So I downloaded it, opened it, and it looks exactly the same 6 years ago. So that was a bummer. And I told my Android colleagues about the frustration, how come Android Studio does not have any visible updates? And then they told me, oh, there's this setting. It's enable new UI. And I did, and it looks, in my opinion, way better, way more modern, and something I want to work with, and not something I have to work with. And it also looks a bit like Xcode. Now, if you wonder what Xcode is, it's a shitty IDE that crashes 3 times a day. So, yeah, Android Studio didn't do this, which was very good. So next step, I got Android Studio installed, then I went to Kotlin cones. Or I didn't, because it's just an online playground with Kotlin basics, and I was thinking I'm more a guy who does things by learning by doing, so I wanted to instantly work with Compose before I do all this boring Kotlin basic stuff. So I did this Android Compose course, and it's very good for getting started because they give you a step-by-step introduction into Compose. And I gained some basic Compose knowledge, but I quit after the first unit because it was getting kind of boring, and I wanted to work on this real feature to get really practical Compose knowledge and not some textbook guide through that is used there, but not in the app. So I worked on the feature, And since I already implemented it with Swift UI, I had this concept there that I just want to have like a pop-up that hosts the content. So a view that dims the background and positions it, and then I can put any content I want in there. So on Android, I tried to do the same with the activities. So I wanted to have this pop-up activity that dims the background, and it also accepts some content that is going to be displayed on the bottom. And here's some code, like high-level code, how I did it. So I extended from the app compat activity, and then which is called the pop-up, or I extended the pop-up activity from the app compat activity, and then you have the content functions, which is going to be displayed at the right position, and then you can just subclass this activity and override the content to like get the content displayed where it is. And in this case, it's like this what's new thingy. So I started it. I launched the emulator, and that's the point where it all went to shit, because it looked like that. You see there's like no dimming of the background, the top status bar is blue, and it should be like transparent. And I talked then to the Android lead, and he was like, I'm not sure. It's kind of tricky to like, get like activity with transparent background in all Android versions. So I thought, and come on, Android is open source. I can look up how it's implemented for dialog and so on. So I tweaked the style.xml a bit with like help from Stack Overflow and the official, like I think it's called dialog theme. And then I got this, which is pretty much like content is different, but like from the styling, it's pretty much what the designers had in mind. And I showed this to the Android lead, and he said, I didn't believe you could do it, which was my proud Android moment that I surprised the Android lead. So what were my learnings from this small journey into Android? First of all, I cannot pass arguments directly into the constructor when I want to start an activity. This is super convenient in Swift UI or UIKit that I can just put all the stuff I want to have in the constructor. And with Kotlin or Android, I need to put this extra in the intent and then fetch it in the activity. And the extra needs to be like parsable, which is not the case on iOS. Like there I can pass anything in there, which in my opinion is a bit annoying. Then we support a lot of Android versions, I think down to Android 8. And checking all of this is a pain. Like there was this case where I wanted to display the SVG image, and it crashed on low-end devices because it was too big or too complex. And I think I tested on like 3 phones. And yeah, on iOS, I know that there are only these certain sizes. We only support the last 2 iOS versions, so it's a lot easier there. So we have automated tests in place at the company where we test all the many different versions and sizes, but still there are a few crashes there. And this screenshot just shows like on browser stack how it looks there. Then learning number 3 is that Android being open source really helps if you're stuck somewhere. Like in Xcode, when you want to go into the function, you just see the function header, but not the concrete implementation. So that's what I really liked about Android, that it's open source. And not being like a native Android guy brings, I think, a new perspective on the problem, because I had like this vision how I did it on iOS, and I wanted to do the same thing on Android. And like the Android lead stated, he thought maybe like if we all work all the time on the same OS, we get blind to like what is possible. It would be the same on iOS. Like if an Android guy works on a feature on iOS, they also might bring a new perspective and think outside the box how to solve this problem. So from these learnings, what I liked about Android development is Android Studio. That's like the biggest part that I like about Android, is finally having a good IDE which doesn't crash, which has automatic imports, yeah, all the good stuff. Then it's open source, as I said. It's very easy to get started with Compose through the videos. It's backwards compatible, so if there is a new Compose feature, it's supported on all the older Android versions. And this is not the case on iOS, because if there is a new feature in Swift UI, it's only available in the newest iOS, and then you have to do like some if checks if you want us to support older iOS versions too, which is super annoying. So that was also very cool on Android. And also the Android team in our company was very helpful. Whenever I asked them with questions, they were super responsive and they helped me getting started there. So I really appreciate the Android guys there. What I didn't like is, as I said, supporting so many different versions and sizes. That was actually also the main reason back then, a couple years ago, why I decided to become an iOS developer and not Android, because it's, to be honest, it's way more convenient than iOS. That I know I have these couple sizes, I have these versions, and it's pretty deterministic what to support. Also, I didn't like the emulator on Android Studio because it just felt like slow and clunky. And yeah, the iOS simulator, in my opinion, is just way better because it's fast. You can like simulate a freeway drive. I know you can do this on the Android emulator too, but in my opinion, it's just easier in Xcode through the iOS simulator. And also, as I said, navigating to new activities is kind of a pain or inconvenient for me, at least as an outsider. Because as we have here on the left side in Kotlin, we do this, put the intent, start this intent, then put the extra there, and then Swift UI or Swift, we can just push it onto the navigation controller directly, and it just needs to conform to the view controller protocol or class. So this is, in my opinion, way more convenient in Swift. So was it a cool experience overall? Yes. I really liked it. It gave me like a new understanding of Android, and with Compose and Swift UI, the two worlds are just connecting. And like if you're familiar with one, you can probably easily get started with the other one as well. Should your team try to, like if you are in a team which is in a company which has like split up Android and iOS departments, I definitely think you should try it as well, because the other guys might bring a new perspective in there and mix things up a bit. So if you have the power to like propose to your CTO or to your lead, hey, I want to like do this feature in the other platform, I would just go for it and just ask the other team for some getting started help, and yeah, just go there and try to do it, and it will be fun, I promise. So the biggest question after all of this, am I still an iOS developer? Yes, yes I am. And I'm very sorry to you iOS developer. Nice. Very sorry to disappoint you all, but I just want to point out why. Even though they are quite similar, I personally prefer Swift UI and Swift syntax compared to Kotlin and Compose. And I'm going to show you a small example here. So on the left side we have Kotlin code, on the right side we have Swift code. And while the Kotlin code looks smaller, or like less lines of code, my main point why I love Swift is the enum. Like if you go to the last line, in Kotlin you have to write enum.case. And in Swift you can omit the enum class name. And like for a short name, that's fine. Like pet tab, typing it once, it's fine. But if you have a lot of repetition there or super long enum names, this feature becomes really convenient. And that's one of the things why I love Swift. And also, to be honest, I prefer the structure of Swift UI, like how you build a view and how you modify it, over the Kotlin version or Compose version. Because here on the left we have a composable view, and on the right we have a Swift UI view, and they do the same thing. So we align it to the center trailing or right, set some padding, set the background color and the corner radius. But for me, it's way more readable in the what's new or in the Swift UI view, because I don't have to like, when there are less parentheses, I don't have to like check the modifier because it's all like down below in the code. So in my opinion, it's better readable. It could also be because I'm not that familiar with Compose, and if you're Compose Pro, you might say, oh, I'm reading this like a child's book, and the Swift UI version is super hard to read. But in my opinion, Swift UI is just beautiful. So also, I don't have to support so many devices. Like I said a couple times, that's one of the main reasons why I switched to iOS development. And that's also the thing that's keeping me back keeping me back from going back to Android. And last but not least, I want to emphasize it's a very personal opinion, but iOS is better than Android. And with that, we come to the end. Thank you so much for attending. And yeah, if you have questions, I'm around the rest of the day and tomorrow as well. So happy to have a chat, and thank you.